You're trying to write a team, but it feels like you got one good character with a couple generic henchmen. No matter what you do, you can't find a way to fix it, so you're stuck wondering, is there some way to salvage this, or am I going to have to start all over again at square one? In this video, I'll teach you everything you need to know about writing teams of any size. The good news is that no matter how bad things are, it's always fixable. The number one rule for a team is that every character has to stand on their own, right? They have to be good, they have to be interesting, and worthy of being a main character. But how do you do that? The trick is you treat them like a real person, because within the confines of the story and from their point of view, they are. In order to make sure you got a good base, what I like to do is start with a character sheet. So you're going to open a new document. You can have multiple character sheets on the same document, by the way, but you start out with 1 to 2 sentences, maybe 3, that are a general overview of who they are and sort of what their role is. After you do that, you're going to want to get into backstory, right? You're going to do 2 to 3 points, sometimes 4 if it's super necessary. But you want this to be a compact and concise document, right? So aim for only 2 to 3 major points that were very formative and were kind of turning points in their life. That's the backstory that you're going to write down. Each point can get a paragraph. I would try to limit it to a paragraph, because if you need to expand, you can do that in the heat of the moment within your story. But these points, they have to be very formative and what kind of drives them to be who they are today. Now we give them a want and a need. That want is, surface level, and it's, just as you would expect, driven by what their backstory is and who they are, like what they've been formed into by the events they've been through. It'll be, a decent overview type of thing. It's surface level. Something that they're not afraid to necessarily admit to people, unless they're like a guarded type of person, right? But what I'm saying is it's not vulnerable per se. And then you give them a need. The need is sort of the deeper reflection, the sort of subconscious version of their want. It's not the kind of thing that they would tell people. They might not even know what their need is themselves. And like I said, that's what fuels the want. That's kind of what makes them tick and connects them to your story and makes them go through it all. After that, you just do like a line or two about, some flaws or vices that they have, or some struggles they deal with as a result of that backstory. You're going to want to try to keep it concise. In the end, you're going to want it to be anywhere between half a page to 3/4 of a page per character. I've never actually done a character sheet that was more than a page. You really want it to sort of be a cheat sheet that you can look at real quick and you got everything you need. After you're done all that, as a little bit of a bonus, you can add in a few quotes that are stuff like that they would say or that they are going to say in the story. And that'll really help you sort of encapsulate who they are. That does a lot of extra helping if you're away from your story for a while and you're just coming back into it. But again, that's a bonus, right? You can cut it off as soon as you're done, like the flaws or struggles, slash the things that they're dealing with today. That's your first major thing, is that, you want to make everybody their own very fleshed out character and make it so that any one of them is worthy of being the protagonist, regardless of if they are or not. What's number two? In a team, characters tend to have like a role they specialize in type of thing, something that they're really good at. And maybe it's a little bit of an identity thing too, kind of like in real life. If you think about your own friend group, you probably got the one that everybody considers the smart one, or the one that's good with words or people slash like emotionally connecting to people. Maybe you got a third friend that's kind of considered like a deep thinker in a philosophical way, or they seem to have everything figured out in life. In terms of writing teams, there are a few like sort of preset recurring roles. The good thing with teams is that there's no sort of preset size though, right? Like no matter what amount of people you're doing in this group, there's always familiarity to it, right? It's always been done before. There's always flexibility you have and dynamics that you can make use of, whether it's two people, three, four, five, six, even more. The possibilities in that regard are pretty endless. A really common sort of preset in writing is the 5-man band. And that's, five people come together. They each have their own sort of thing that they specialize in. For example, you got the leader, the lancer, the strong guy, the smart guy, and like the heart of the group. The leader is, the person in charge, basically. A problem that you can get with leaders is that sometimes they're just like a little bit of a generic, I tell people what to do kind of role, and oh, I'm a nice guy kind of thing. The lancer is sort of the rival of the leader and the one that gives the leader the most pushback kind of thing. They rebel. Sometimes they try to fill the role of the leader. If you're not careful, like if you're doing a really generic lancer, it could just end up with, yeah, this guy's unlikable and he's just giving everybody a hard time all the time type of thing. But if that lancer is executed well, it does really bring the leader dynamic up to a higher level, and it's a lot of fun. The strong one, or like the tough one, there's a couple different takes on it, right? Like they can be physically big and strong, or if it's a magic setting, it could be the smallest person is the strongest. A smart one, that does tend to be pretty literal, right? They're good with their thinking and all that. The heart, that's the person that's sort of like the emotional compass of the group. It's very, like, stereotypically, it does tend to be a woman in the group, but not always, right? It could also be that sort of light-hearted joke character that's actually also like, hey, like, I don't know if we're going in the right direction here type of thing. I find a very classical example of the 5-man band to be Team Avatar from Avatar The Last Airbender. You got Aang, who is the leader. You got Sokka, the smart one. You've got Toph, the strong one. You've got Katara as the heart. And then a lot of people put Zuko as the lancer there. I kind of disagree with that, just because the dynamic is... It's not quite there, right? He's kind of part of the group, but when he joins, it's quite late. And it's not... If you want to really shoehorn a guy into Lancer, maybe it's Zuko, but I find sometimes Sokka would be the better one to be considered the Lancer, because Sokka's the guy that's always like, hey, what are you doing? We should do it this way instead type of thing. But that's another very good, important point when it comes to groups. In a well-executed group like that, people aren't just filling one single role. Aang will sort of moonlight as the heart. Sokka is the smart guy, but like I said, sometimes he'll be the lancer. Sometimes Sokka functions as the leader, and sometimes Katara functions as the strong one of the group. Circling back to Sokka, a lot of the time he does play the role of comic relief sort of thing, but a lot of the time he's also the most serious, and he is the one feeling the weight of the decisions and has the sort of safety of the group in his hands. The main thing is that they all are multifaceted, they all rise to the occasion, and they all develop and do their best to function within different scenarios. They do operate as close to real people as they can be within the bounds of the story. Let's compare this to the Ninja Turtles. They're a bit more set in stone. They kind of get pigeonholed into one role and they almost end up like a caricature. It's executed well enough and it's enjoyable. People love it. But it does lack a little bit of that extra depth, and it does leave the fans, even the most hardcore fans, craving a bit more. Consider the relationships in Avatar The Last Airbender versus Ninja Turtles. When it comes to Ninja Turtles, Leonardo and Raphael, their relationship is well defined, but pretty much all the other ones sort of sink to the back burner, and we don't get as many moments as we should, and that stuff is a little bit less defined too. I would argue the only reason that Raphael really gets so many character moments is because it ends up being a source of conflict, right? Like Raphael wants to leave the team, Raphael wants to become the leader of the team, he thinks he can do it better than Leonardo. The other ones don't really get as many character moments and their relationships aren't as well defined. That's not to say that they're not defined at all, but I do not think you would find a single Ninja Turtles fan that says, oh yeah, I get enough of the relationships. I feel like the Ninja Turtle fans, other than like, the casual watchers that are just looking for some fights and stuff. But I feel like the more diehard Ninja Turtle fans would really say, hey, look, yeah, no, the relationships, I really want more of this stuff. It's not fleshed out enough for me, and I desire it. If you compare that to Avatar The Last Airbender, you can think of any sort of two people in that group, and their relationship is well defined. In that show, they all have character moments and bonding moments in the bigger, more overarching group and individually, but also in those different pairs as well. And that's what really makes people able to latch onto it, right? They see how the individual works, they see how pretty much every pairing works, and they also see how those individual pairings work in relation to the bigger group. Think of like Toph and Aang, Toph and Katara, Zuko and Katara. Like, you can tell me exactly what each of those relationships are like if you've watched the show. And you can do the same thing with Sokka too, right? You can even tell me what most of those characters' individual relationships are like with the pet characters, right? Like the flying lemur Momo and the flying bison Appa. Now, with all this said, does this mean Ninja Turtles is bad? No. People love it and it is good. They execute it very well. The thing is, the fans are left wanting more, right? And when you make your story, odds are you're not going to be Ninja Turtles or the next Ninja Turtles. You can be, but you got to sort of make use of every device at your at your disposal, and do your best in every regard you can and every facet to even have a chance of it, right? Like adding more good stuff and adding more good depth is only going to elevate your work. And just like Ninja Turtles, even though it's already good, deepening that team bond and those individual relationships would bring it up to the next level. If your story is good and your characters are good, people will crave more, and you should give it to them. Another thing I want to touch on is the Avengers in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They're a good example of how the same role can actually be held by multiple members of the group, even at the same time. For example, Tony Stark is the smart one of the group, but Bruce Banner is also the smart one of the group in a lot of similar ways, like straight up a lot of the same ways sometimes, but also in very different ways. And the different sort of character base and personality that they have gives a coloration to it that makes them each unique and nuanced. That's why you can have two the smart ones and people are actually like, wow, this is great. I want to see how these two guys interact and what their relationship ends up being like. Thor is the strong one, but the Hulk is also the strong one, and their different types of strength gives different nuance to it. Captain America is the heart, but Thor is also the heart as well. So again, we're getting different takes on the same role. We are developing relationships and we are showing how the characters and their different facets of who they are sort of meld together and interact on a deeper level. Sometimes Tony's even the heart, now that I think about it, but that's the thing. Pretty much everybody is playing multiple roles and they're playing different takes on multiple roles. Another thing, and this is not a coincidence, each of the characters is treated like a protagonist, and they, in that scenario, straight up have their own movies where they actually are the protagonist and they're developed on their own, separate from the group. You don't have to have people being part of their own story or anything, right? Or any separate type of thing. But you do want it to be the kind of thing where it's feasible, right? The reason the Avengers works so well is because you see the group and you go, yeah, I'd watch a Captain America movie. Yeah, I'd watch an Iron Man movie or a Thor or a Hulk movie. And then you get all of them together. They're all cool on their own, and then they sort of come together to be even cooler together than they are on their own. Just like in Avatar, we have tons of moments where these characters are in just pairs, and we get to see tons of character moments between the two, like a bunch of different sets of two, and we get to see how every relationship is and how it's different. Something you can't forget is that if your characters act like a team, they will feel like a team. And always keep that in the back of your head when you're writing something like that. Now, that is everything I have for today. So as always, make sure to like and subscribe. If you got any questions, make sure to leave it down in the comments below and I will make sure to respond.